This episode of Scrolling to Death is sponsored by Bark Technologies. Bark offers parents advanced content monitoring for all of your child's devices. Bark is literally helping to save lives and has alerted parents to millions of life-threatening situations like self-harm and severe bullying. More on Bark in the episode notes. Welcome to the Big Tech Gut Check here on Scrolling to Death. Before I jump into updates for parents for the week of January 6th, I want to share how devastated I am for all of the families who have been affected by the fires in California. The devastation is hard to process. The photos and videos are difficult to watch, and as of the time of this recording, the fires, most of them are 0% contained. So first of all, I just want to say I'm so sorry to these families. I have personal friends who lost their homes and were unable to grab any of their personal belongings or memorabilia in the process of evacuating. I'm going to include links to both support the fire victims through donations and then also an incredible Google document that victims can access to get free items, free food, all kinds of resources that local organizations have put together. Moving on to the updates. Today, January 10th, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments from TikTok to decide if they should put a hold on the law that would ban TikTok from operating here in the U.S. If the law is allowed to move forward, TikTok will need to sell to a U.S.-based company or a company that is not controlled by a foreign adversary by January 19th, or we will remove it from our app stores. This case particularly is about national security, that our government found TikTok to be a national security threat and that the Chinese Communist Party can and is influencing what TikTok shows to users, making sure that TikTok users favor China over foreign adversaries. In fact, the first peer-reviewed and data-driven study just dropped, which showed that TikTok is actively manipulating perceptions of China and the Chinese Communist Party through algorithmic bias. I'll include a link to that study in the episode notes. But what is not going to be addressed today at the Supreme Court hearing is how horrible TikTok is for children. These issues have been addressed separately and revealed through lawsuits by 14 different states. I'm going to summarize briefly TikTok's harm to minors as outlined in the After Babel Substack this week. If you have a child on TikTok, please listen closely. And if you don't allow TikTok access, you're probably never going to after hearing what they're doing. So company insiders at TikTok were aware and are aware that TikTok is seriously harming children, but they were told to not move forward with protective measures and focus on maximizing engagement regardless of how it affects American children. Internal documents state that, quote, unhealthy and compulsive usage is not a priority for any other team and leaders don't buy into problems with unhealthy usage. TikTok also knows that their parental controls are ineffective and rarely used. An internal document states that TikTok family pairing does not address parents' top concerns, including inappropriate content, offensive interactions, and lack of privacy. What was revealed in these documents is TikTok's internal leakage rate, meaning how much bad stuff is getting past moderators, leaking through. Here we go. 35.7% of the content that normalizes pedophilia gets past moderators. 39.1% of the content where minors are solicited for sex gets past moderators. 39.1% of the content where minors are physically abused gets past moderators. And 90% of the content showing normalization of drugs is on TikTok without moderation. And get this, 100% of content that fetishes minors stays on TikTok does not get removed. TikTok has the opportunity to incorporate modern technology to detect child sexual abuse material and has chosen not to use it, even though this technology would be free to TikTok. TikTok makes their algorithm addictive for minors on purpose. They use, quote, coercive design tactics and a manipulative slot machine effect to keep kids on as long as possible. Because according to TikTok, teens have minimal ability to self-regulate effectively. An internal report by TikTok found that overuse of TikTok causes negative emotions, loss of sleep, poor school performance, loss of memory formation and empathy, and increased anxiety. Young TikTok users report that they feel like they are trapped in a rabbit hole on TikTok, being fed videos that encourage them to starve themselves or even take their own lives. There is more, but I'll move on. So the Anxious Generation and Jonathan Haidt performed a national survey of adolescents from age 18 to 27. They asked about TikTok. And 47% said they wish that TikTok was never invented at all. Normal, everyday use of TikTok is a severe threat to our children, to millions of children. TikTok should not be accessible to minors, and the Supreme Court should uphold the law being reviewed today, January 10th. Okay, now moving on to Meta. There was a huge update this week. You probably saw headlines related to free speech or fact checking. And here's what Meta said directly, and then I'll explain further. Starting in the US, we are ending our third-party fact-checking program and moving to a community notes model. We will allow more speech by lifting restrictions on some topics that are part of mainstream discourse and focusing our enforcement on illegal and high-severity violations. We will take a more personalized approach to political content so that people who want to see more of it in their feeds can. So what does this mean? Well, here's Mark Zuckerberg in his video update this week talking about how this update will result in more bad content being on Facebook and Instagram.
We're also going to tune our content filters to require much higher confidence before taking down content. The reality is that this is a trade-off. It means we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down.
Zuckerberg goes on to blame his own fact checkers for being too politically biased in the past, and he's actually moving Meta's content moderation teams from California to Texas. Now, is this update an effort to get into favor with the upcoming administration, like Elon Musk has done? President Trump says probably that this move is probably due to threats that Trump has made against Meta and Zuckerberg. But putting politics aside, I want to share some of a LinkedIn post from Facebook whistleblower Arturo Bejar, who translated this a bit more for us. So 8 out of 10 times, Meta has been proactively removing harmful content. But rather than improve that number, Meta is going to stop doing it. So all 10 pieces of content, including the 8 harmful ones, will get amplified. Meta is going to stop proactively enforcing removal of posts around self-harm, pornography, violence, and bullying, and instead depend on us, the users, to report it. Though they know that by the time a report is submitted and reviewed, the harm is already done. And also, 99% of people don't report anyway, and 98% of the time, people who report are told they're wrong. My big issue here is that Meta did not address how these updates will affect children. There was not a word. Instagram and Facebook were already not safe for kids, and now it's crystal clear. You have to keep your children off of these platforms. Meta is going to extraordinary lengths to prevent your children from being protected. And the update this week is just one of many examples. Meta should go back to its roots, a chronological feed that stops when we hit the end of our updates. A law here in California called SB 976 was supposed to go into effect on January 1st to remove algorithms for minors, so minors would get a chronological feed. But an organization that is funded by social media companies called NetChoice sued California to try to overturn the law. They were successful in convincing the judge to remove certain parts, and NetChoice continues to challenge the law, which will be held up in court for many more months or maybe years, while more children are addicted and harmed in the meantime. So I will keep you updated on this update from Meta. I will also be reporting live on my Instagram at Scrolling to Death on the TikTok decision in the Supreme Court today. But let's end with a little bit of hope. It's the new year. These companies still suck, just like they always did and will. We all know now that their priority is engagement and profit, not our children's safety. So parents like you and me, we can rise up. We can choose to not let our kids on social media until, I'm going to say, 18. We can teach them why. We can tell them about the bad stuff and how it's not healthy or safe for them. We can delay in community, find other families who will join us so our kids are not alone. And we can choose devices that were built for children, not iPhones that were built for adults and cause us more issues without any real protections. We can choose safety. We have power and we need to use it. That is it for this week on the Big Tech Gut Check here on Scrolling to Death. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next week.